Hi, this is Dr. Kimberley Linert, and you're listening to Incredible Life Creator Podcast. My guest today is Annie M. Fonte. Annie Fonte is a Harvard educated MBA with multiple successful businesses to her credit and who truly lives the life of her dreams. Annie is the founder of Meet Me at the Barn, a program that helps you to live the life you love. She is the CEO of Evolve Physical Therapy and Advanced Wellness. Welcome to the podcast, Annie.
Thank you, Kimberly, for having me. I appreciate you carving out some time for me today.
Yeah, so excited to have you. So, just so people can get to know you and understand what it means to meet at the barn and all that, why don't you tell us like where you grew up, how you started out, and how you got into this concept?
Okay, happy to. I was fortunate to be born and raised in a very small town in Northeastern Colorado. I was raised on a farm, and my two brothers and I helped our dad do the farming. From a very young age, we were on tractors and in trucks and doing all kinds of things that it takes to do farming, which was a great foundation to build the rest of my life on. I was also in junior high and high school very active in athletics, which allowed me to get a scholarship to go to my undergrad program. And I played basketball and volleyball for 2 years before sustaining a knee injury that required me to stop being an athlete. And after graduating from undergrad, I went into banking. And as I was going through the marketing department at the bank, I ran into Jack DeBoer, who is the founder of the Residence Inn Company. And I went to work with Jack and his team as a franchise development person. And I spent a great deal of my time in the Northeast, where I would look for potential franchisees to build hotels. And right in the middle of that, Marriott Corporation, who most of our listeners, I'm sure, have heard of, if not stayed in one of their properties, purchased the Residence Inn Company. So the Residence Inn is now a brand under the Marriott umbrella. And I continued working with them for a couple of years doing site selection. I would buy land and go through the process of getting a Residence Inn hotel built. And I was driving around one of the corridors of Boston, which was where I was living at the time. And I thought, anybody could do what I'm doing right now. And I really wanted to pursue being an entrepreneur. So I drove over to Harvard Business School and I picked up an application. And it took me about 4 months to fill that application out. And I finally did accomplish that. And I can't to this day tell you why, but I was selected to be part of that program. So I left Marriott and went to Harvard for 2 years in the MBA program. And upon graduation, I came out to San Diego area, which is where I currently live. And I worked for a venture-backed startup company in the healthcare arena. And that company eventually went public and moved to Atlanta. I did not want to go to Atlanta. And about that time, I met my current business partner who owned a physical therapy practice. We currently still own that practice. And since then, we've developed two products and patented those. And I, in the meantime, ran into a third business partner that we developed some technology that we eventually licensed to Rubbermaid Corporation. And in 2007, my house burned to the ground. My dad died. One of the companies I was a founder of was in a very complex lawsuit. And the 12-year relationship I'd been in with a fellow was also going up in flames all at the same time.
Mhm.
And so this is how Meet Me at the Barn came about. Once the house got reconstructed and all the dust settled from those very emotional events in my life, I had a challenge with the flooring vendor. And so I chose to move into my home with no flooring. And I picked the bedroom that I felt comfortable in, and I blew up an air mattress, and my dog Pork Chop jumped on top of it right next to me. And I leaned over and put my elbows on my knees. And I said to myself, Annie, you must get your stuff together. And so I lived like that for a year. No furniture, no paintings, no TVs. I didn't bring anything into my life that I felt would distract me. And I really came up with a program for myself, which I call my 10 lines in the sand, that I was committed to living my life from that point forward. And that is how Meet Me at the Barn was formulated.
Beautiful. And what a rough way to find out and learn that.
Well, sometimes if you're not paying attention, God will make it so you do. So I think that's what happened in my case.
Yeah. So I'm just curious to find out what these 10 lines are. And obviously, you're not going to go over all of them right now, but um, what changed for you? What changed for you in that year after loss, taking that whole year?
I got to the place where I had known for a long time I wasn't being my authentic self. I knew that in my gut, but some of your listeners can probably relate to this. You know something's not right. However, your fear of making a change is something that's bigger than your courage in those situations. At least I can speak for myself. But I knew when the house burned and this relationship was coming untethered and this lawsuit was going on, that was really my opportunity to have a stopping point and to redesign my life. And so that's what I took the time out to do. And it was an old farming term, if you will, 40 miles of rough road. It's not easy to do that. It's very scary to do that. It's very uncomfortable to do that. But I am so glad that I did. And I tell you what, one of the lines in the sand is to view every experience as a gift. And that came because as I looked at my dad dying and my home burning to the ground, everything I had burned to the ground, and a relationship that I had worked very hard to be a part of for 12 years, and then being part of a really complex lawsuit, every single one of those things ultimately were a huge gift in my life. And so that is one of the lines in the sand, view every experience as a gift.
Wow. And then, so in your day-to-day life, like when you woke up in the morning, little by little, what things changed? Did you actually wake up with a different mindset each day?
Well, what I did is I really went on a journey of self-discovery. So I read a lot and I did a lot of journaling. I went on a lot of walks. And so my days really consisted of creating a ritual for myself, because the first thing I had to do for myself was I had to feel safe. I felt very vulnerable, even leaving my home to come to my office or leaving my home to go meet friends somewhere. That was really scary for me because I felt like I was peeling back the onion to this place that I was really raw and really exposed. And so I just rated a very, very regimented practice of I would get up every morning and I would write down everything that I was thankful for in my life. And I would write down all the things that I was afraid of and how I was going to take one step each day to get closer to being less afraid of those things and being more who I really was inside. And I really started to evaluate clear back from when I was young, and I remember feeling so authentic as a little girl and what that was like and what had changed and what I needed to do to pursue my path back to that. And I did a lot of reading, and I also had conversations with a lot of folks who I really trusted their counsel, and I trusted that they would hold my feet to the fire. They wouldn't let me get away with making excuses, or they wouldn't let me get away with having a pity party, or they wouldn't let me get away with playing small. And so it was a combination of all of those things. And day in and day out, I continued to practice that. And with anything, the more you use a muscle, the stronger you get. So it took about 2 years for me to really feel like I'd gotten to the place where I felt who I really was from the inside out again. And the strength to go out into the world and hold space for myself and be authentic and inspire others to do the same thing.
Yeah, that part inspire others to do the same thing. So what barn are we meeting at here? I want to know, I want to know about where to meet.
Well, I'll tell you, it's interesting how that came about. I developed these 10 lines for myself, and I just said, this is how I'm going to live my life from this point forward, moving forward. And I was riding horses. I had horses at the time, and my friend came to ride with me, and I was telling her about the process I'd gone through. And she said, gosh, Annie, you really should share this with other people. And I said, no, I didn't do any of this to share with others. I did this to save myself. And she said, no, I really think there's something to this. I really think you should share this. And then as a matter of fact, I have our corporate retreat coming up in the next couple of weeks. I would like you to do the finance line. One of the lines is be impeccably fiscally disciplined. And she said that would be really good for our corporate managers to go through that line with you. I said, okay. And so after our ride, I emailed her later that day and I said, tell me where you want me to go to do my part. How long are you giving me to be part of your retreat? And can I come a little early to listen to the other speakers? Because I'd spoken at her retreats before. She emailed me back and she says, we want to come to Painted Sky Ranch. That's what my property's called. And we want to meet in your barn. You have the whole day. And we'll be there at 9 o'clock on, I think it was a Tuesday. And I thought, oh my gosh, my barn was not ready for that. But I spent literally the next week, almost every waking hour getting it ready for them. And they showed up and we spent the day together. There was about 15 of them. We spent the day together going through the financial line. It was a beautiful day. I saw a lot of transformation. I saw a lot of congealing of their team together. And it was a remarkable transformation just within about a 6-hour time frame. And she said, see, I told you need to share this with people. Mm-hmm. And so I said, okay. So I wrote the criteria, the curriculum, the content for those 10 lines. And I asked 10 of my gal friends that were local. I said, would you come to my barn one day a month for an entire year and go through these lines and let me kind of use you as a beta group to work the bugs out and those kinds of things. And so we did that. And once again, I saw amazing changes and transformations and smiles come to faces during that year. So I felt like if I had something to share that was going to give that much value to others, then I would do that. And so I created the live course. And I also have created an online course for people who aren't in the San Diego area that would like to go through the course as well.
Beautiful. So are you still meeting in your barn then? Or
interesting as all of us, your listeners know this because they've been involved in it as well, with the COVID-19 opportunity that we were presented with at the beginning of the year. The social distance requirements didn't allow me to have I limit the class to 10 people. So my barn is not tiny, but it's not big. So I, until recently, decided I'm just going to wait to let the dust settle on all of that. Mm-hmm. I'm starting a new class next Thursday. I'm limiting it to only 6 people and I've got it all measured out and whatnot. So I'm complying with all the suggestions of being safe with this. And then what I'm doing starting on Tuesday, the 20th, is I thought that it would be worthwhile doing another beta test to see if via Zoom I could accomplish as much or hopefully close to as much as we do live. Mm-hmm. So every third Tuesday and Thursday from 4 to 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, I'm going to do a beta test for 3 months to see if I can somehow create an opportunity for folks that don't feel like they want to go somewhere and be around people yet, or they're somewhere in the world that they cannot physically come and meet at the barn, to see if that might be a platform that would be valuable. And I know there's a lot of Zoom fatigue, but I think if someone's really interested in creating a life that they love, this might be a good option. So we're going to see.
Exactly. And as you said, this is just so funny how my mind works because I'm an artist type. I saw the screen of the computer with all the people on it, and I saw a frame of a barn.
There you go.
On the Zoom meeting.
That's really good.
I in the barn.
I don't know if I can pull that off or not, but yes, meet me at the barn came from literally we meet in my barn, and it's a beautiful, safe, very spiritual, a place of a lot of sanctity and it really allows one to leave their challenges at the door and come into an environment where they feel safe, where they can be vulnerable and they can really share what's on their heart and not be judged or not feel like they're the only one or not compare themselves to others. And so it got its name because we do meet in a barn.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So, would you like to share with me some of the transformations that you saw? Because there was like 10 different subjects over a year. So, what were some of the ones that really stand out for you?
Well, a couple that I can recall, I had a participant who hadn't spoken to her sister in 7 years. And one of the exercises, the class involves a lot of exercises, a lot of questions and inquiry and a creative project. So we can awaken that artist within all of us. And one of the exercises was to write 3 different letters. One letter was to someone who's no longer physically here,
Mhm.
that you need to complete something with. The second letter was to someone who is still physically living that you haven't communicated with for a long time. And a third letter was a thank you to someone in your life that really was inspirational, and you probably didn't really tell them at the time, and now would be a good time to do that. And so she wrote a letter to her sister and invited her to come to her home to visit for a weekend and to have kind of a social gathering. And her sister accepted that. And it was for the first time in 7 years they even had any communication with one another at all. And from that point, the relationship really started to thrive again and become healthy and whatnot. So that was one of them. I had another situation where a participant was in a bad marriage and knew it and had known it for a long time, but just didn't feel that she had the courage to manage herself, to choose herself out of it. And over time, she did.
Mhm.
And today is thrilled with her life and is living a very fulfilled and exciting and peaceful and joyous life. And going through that process really helped her come to the conclusion that yes, this was something that needed to happen, and that she really did have the courage and the tools to have the appropriate conversations to make it as easy as possible when relationships come apart for both of them to go through this journey together. So those are a couple. Others have had financial changes in their lives. Others have gone from fear of missing out on things to they're so happy just going out in their garden and working in the garden during the day. And another one started an eBay business. So there's been a lot of changes in people's lives as a result of participating in the class. It's fun to see, and it makes me feel like, you know, if I can be the facilitator, because I don't fix people, that's not what I do. I facilitate them and really recognizing and embracing their own authenticity. And from that foundation, they can do anything they want in their lives.
Wonderful. And I was thinking, because of your own personal journey, you can help people in that emotional, personal piece. But because of your business background, you can also be that wise person to advise them as far as if they're saying, well, I'm going to go do this. You might say, well, you might want to look at this and this and this. You have that, the wisdom on both sides.
Yes, I'm fortunate. I am very fortunate to have been able to find myself in a master's of business program that I learned a lot from. And all of those personal experiences add to my ability to be a conduit to these folks. And because I don't know about you and some of your listeners, but I don't really want to take a life development course from a 22-year-old who has barely gotten out of school. There's nothing wrong with them and what they could teach me. There's a lot a 22-year-old who's just graduated from school could teach me, but they haven't gone through enough hard knocks and life experiences to
Mhm.
really have me step into a place where I trust what they're telling me is coming from a place of experience that I would respect and honor and be able to relate to. So all those things that at the time felt like, wow, I felt so beat up. It's not easy to lose a parent. It's not easy when your home burns to the ground and you get to start over, and lawsuits are not for the lighthearted for sure. And relationships, regardless of the circumstances, are always difficult to get through all that emotion. It's hard to imagine that all of those would be the gift that they are, but they certainly did give me a bag full of tools to work from, that's for
Mhm.
sure.
Yes. And Just before we came on here, you had a picture of your business partner and her dog. And um, how did you meet your business partner and how did this come together? Because, when you're putting together any type of business or relationship or marriage, anything, having the right person is so important. And you talk so fondly. So how did you meet and how is this all working?
That's a really good question, and it's a good story. My mom was living in Sacramento um, a handful of years ago, and my business partner's parents lived in Sacramento as well, and they just happened to go to the same church. And so they met after church one day, and they were standing out in front of the church and talking. And of course, tell me a little bit about you. And kids come up, obviously. I'm sure when you're in a conversation with folks, you like to talk about your kids.
Mhm.
And so my mom said, well, my daughter lives in San Diego, and my business partner's name is Kate. Kate's mom says, well, so does my mom or my daughter. What does she do? And they got to talking. And my mom called me that afternoon and she said, I met the most wonderful people at church. And their daughter lives in the San Diego area. And my mom was really concerned that I didn't have any friends and I was working all the time. And also at the same time, the company I was working for, one of the founders, who I was the assistant to him, he was the president of the company he founded, he was in the end stages of liver cancer. And so I was doing a lot with his family and going to the hospital and spending a lot of time with him. And we were going through a business transition of transitioning him out of being the president and hiring new people. And so that was a busy time in my life. And she said, you ought to call Kate and get together. And I said, okay, I'll do that. And so I called Kate a couple of times. We tried to marry our schedules so we could meet. And it was hard because she was very busy and I was going through these things, but we did. And right away, I liked Kate. She's very ebullient and she's got big energy about her. And she was running a physical therapy practice. And she told me a little bit about it. And I didn't know anything much about the business of physical therapy. And we met a couple of other times, and I was getting ready to transition out of the company that I was working for, and I didn't know what I was going to do next. And so Kate called me one day in the middle of this big move from San Diego to Atlanta with this company. And she said, I just got a great idea. And I said, oh, really? What's that? She says, I think you should come join me in my company. And she was in a situation where she needed to turn her practice around. It was really struggling financially, and we can work together and turn this company around. And I said, I don't know anything about physical therapy, etc. So I spent some time with her. And at the same time, a corporate physical therapy company was courting her to buy her company. And I said, before she went off to this meeting, I said, well, let's sit down and go through your financials. And in that moment, given my business background and all of my quantitative things that I'd learned at business school, I discovered that her business was in really bad shape. And so I spent some time on the business and I looked into what was possible and where we were and the things we needed to do. And so I agreed. And I infused some capital into the company because it needed it. And I told her, I said, you and I have to work for free till we get this thing turned around. So we went through a basic, very challenging turnaround process for a year. And at the end of that year, we were profitable. And we finally paid ourselves.
That's great.
Yeah, we finally paid ourselves for the first time. And so that was kind of the start of staying in the physical therapy business and then developing some products after that and continuing today to be in the business.
Beautiful. That is a fun story. So talk about that, being an entrepreneur and actually looking at where you're at just to make the right decision, but just how to stay in it. Because entrepreneurs, they work hard. They have to stay in it even when it's looking a little hopeless.
Yeah, I think, and that's so true, Kimberly, because as you know, most companies that start fail into the 90 percentile fail. And so if there's any entrepreneurs listening, I say, don't take it personally. It's something that happens frequently. I'll give you an example of a challenging time to stay in it. And it was recently, probably for almost all of our listeners, depending on what industry they were in March, when the country was forced to shut down because of COVID, there was a lot of challenging things for people from an income standpoint. How are we going to stay in business if it was a restaurant or a gym or those kinds of things? And we went through a little bit of the same thing. The good news for us is we were considered an essential business because we're in the healthcare business. But we still had to sit down and have the conversation. Kate and I were just talking about it a few minutes ago, where we sat down in the room together and we looked at each other and said, okay, what are we going to do to continue to serve our patients and our clients? What adjustments do we have to make? What pivot do we have to make? So in that moment, we started writing down, okay, we have to move all of our physical functional fitness classes from people actually coming to our space to online. That meant we had to upgrade our delivery of Zoom to all of these people and get them set up and teach them how to use this. Okay, how can we continue to have conversation and talk about wellness to our patients who can no longer physically feel comfortable coming into our clinic? So we set up telemedicine, and we had to go through all the forms and the changes and educating the patient about how to do Zoom, and our own employees how to do that, and the forms they had to fill out, and is this insurance reimbursable? So there were a lot of moving parts and there were a lot of dynamics in that. And it was just really, I think, having clarity about why we show up here every day. And the whole reason we show up here every day is to assist and inspire other people to reach their highest level of health and well-being, and staying committed to that. And so living in that focus allowed us to ask really good questions, and those really good questions allowed us to have really good inspired actions to a desired outcome of what we've been able to accomplish. And just today, interestingly enough, Kimberly, we just taught our 100th digital physical functional fitness class. Yeah, today. And our folks have stuck with us. They've remained in really good shape. Our patients have stuck with us, and now more of them are starting to come back in. But I think that's the thing, is to have a lot of clarity about how you're going to serve others. And then to entrepreneurs, oftentimes, Kimberly, I think, because we become entrepreneurs because we want a certain level of control, right? And with that level of control, sometimes we don't want to give up things that we're not maybe masterful with. For instance, I love to get on a stage and speak, or I love to have a conversation with you, or I love to go out and coach others. What I know I'm not good at doing so much is the marketing side. So I really need to surround myself with people who can tell the story better than I do. They really have that talent. And I think that's with anybody seeking to go into business. You have to stay in your lane. Do what you do best, and then surround yourself with masterful people and allow them to do what they do best, all coming from that really clear vision of why we show up here every day. That would be some of what I would suggest, at least.
Yeah, that really helps, and it's hopeful that you're continuing on even with all these, bumps and along the way, and just encourage people to just keep going, even if they have a small business.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It always is back to your why. No matter
Yes.
what it is, it's always still back to your why.
Yes, and I think to trust in the fact that there is this divine intelligence out there that has our best interest in mind. If we can just trust that. And oftentimes we get in trouble because we get in our thoughts, and our beliefs create our thoughts create our actions create our outcomes. And so we can decide at any time in a day, all day long, to have a different thought. And just having that different thought can change your state, which will change your actions, which will change your outcomes. And it's just being willing to make different decisions to get to an outcome that you desire.
Yeah,
It sounds easier to do than it is. I know that.
that's for sure. Now, I want to ask about your book. So tell me I just want to hear you say it. Tell me the name of your book and why you wrote it and what's in it.
The name of my book is called, I don't know if anybody's watching this or not, but the people who can see it, this is the book. It's called Keep Your Ass in the Saddle. And that title came from, it's a metaphor for stay home, trust your gut, And it's easy to veer off into the ditch of despair. And oftentimes that veering is because we have become addicted to a state of fear or a state of suffering. And you get comfortable with that, even though you know that it's not a place you want to be. We become more comfortable with living in the discomfort of suffering than then we will be willing to allow ourselves to be uncomfortable living in a state of comfort. And that's a mind shift. And so I think if we will allow ourselves to stay centered on what we know for sure, and it starts with our own authenticity and our own beliefs that we were designed by a power bigger than us. I don't know whether people believe in God or source or the force or the universe, whatever it is, doesn't matter. But I think most people believe that there's more knowing and bigger than us out there that designed us in the image of them, and to trust in that. And I believe in God, and I don't think God makes mistakes. So I'm not a mistake. You're not a mistake. And I believe God's a he. Whether it's a he or a she, and whatever people believe that's great. I'm all for that. But he has a plan for me, and he has this divine, beautiful plan set in place for me. All I have to do is quiet myself and listen and watch for the signs to allow that entity to lead me to a path of becoming. And these fires and these lawsuits and these relationship breakups and these deaths of a parent are all part of that divine plan. And if I can just trust that and keep my ass in the saddle in that belief, then life's going to go a lot easier for me. So that's where the title of the book came from.
Beautiful. I love that. So, how do we stay in alignment with who we are?
Well, one of the things that's worked for me is to really sit down and assess who you authentically are. What is your true essence? And an exercise or something that I find valuable in doing that is living in and asking the question, what's most important to me in life? So it's very values-based living. And you can figure out what your values are by doing a values exercise. I have one. I'm happy to share it with you to pass along to the listeners if you would be interested in that. But for example, my top 3 values are: 1 is integrity, 2 is appreciation, and 3 is abundance. Not just financial abundance, but abundance of health and good character and friends and all the things that bring joy into my life. And it helps me stay in alignment when I'm choosing to either enter into a business relationship or a personal relationship, or I'm choosing to do anything in my life, really. If I can say, if in so doing this thing or in so entering into this relationship, will it satisfy all 3 values? Does it have integrity? Is there appreciation on both sides of the table with the other party, the other person, or the other entity? And is there abundance involved in this? And once again, not only financial abundance, but abundance of many different things. If I can say yes to all 3 of those values being met, then I enter into those situations. I feel comfortable that those will work out well for me. If the answer to even one of them is no, I will take a pass on that. So that really helps me stay aligned with my true essence and the values that I hold for myself.
That is a really good way to make any decision, to go through those things.
It kind of keeps you out of the ditch a little bit.
That's a good way to put it. No more in the ditch. So, so you said you're starting another pilot. I'm just wanting to know what things are you offering now for people? How can people get a hold of you?
They can go to my website, which is meetmeatthebarn.com. And I also have a Facebook page called that. And I also have my personal Facebook page, Annie M. Fonte. And on my website, I offer a 21-day authenticity course. So it takes about 15 minutes every day for 21 days. And you get to go through a process of figuring out what your true authenticity is. I also offer my Lines in the Sand class, the online course. And it's not on the website yet because we haven't done this beta test for a Zoom lines in the sand class. If that goes well, that will be another offering. My book's on there. I also created a Beatitudes kit, which is kind of a little card deck and a journal and a candle that you can pull a card each day to help you set the tone for your day, to have that quiet time that's important for yourself. And all of those things can be read about and learned more about by going to the website.
Okay, great. And just a personal question, what gives you the most happiness and fulfillment in your life at this point?
I'll tell you, for me, Kimberly, that's such a great question. And I think it's a great question for all of us to ask ourselves on a daily basis. But for me, it's having gotten to the place where I've recognized and accepted my authentic self, and to really embrace that. And then having gotten there, to live a life as an example that inspires others to do the same for themselves. So that's the big umbrella out there. Secondly, I have a beautiful Australian Shepherd that comes to work with me and goes almost everywhere with me, and he's my constant companion. I recently, within the last 3 weeks, I put my fifth and final horse down. It's just that they were getting older. I lost another one about a year ago. They gave me a ton of joy and fulfillment. So animals can do that for sure.
They sure can. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast and for all your wisdom. I so appreciate you.
Happy to do it. And I'm so appreciative of you giving me time to talk to your audience and offer hopefully a few words of wisdom that might help them along their journey.
So, one last question before we finish today. What's your best advice in living an incredible, amazing life?
I think, Kimberly, for me, my best advice is to have the willingness and the courage to release or let go everything that we know is untrue in our lives. That's why that conversation in our heads, that self-talk, is so important. We can be very hard on ourselves and very critical of ourselves when we're talking to ourselves. We would not talk to others most of the time the same way we talk to ourselves. So really asking the question when you're having those thoughts in your own mind, is that true? Is that making my situation better? And is it serving me? So to have the courage to let go of everything that's not true, number one, and then having a real clear vision of what you want for yourself. What do you want your life to be about? How do you want to serve others? And then being present enough to know that there's that divine, infinite intelligence out there that has our best interest in mind. And if we will just quiet ourselves and pay close enough attention and be present enough in each moment to recognize that soft voice that is leading us along this path to our best life. Those would be my final thoughts of encouragement or inspiration or wisdom for people.
Well, thank you so much. And we'll talk to you again soon, Annie.
Sounds great. Thank you.